With the introduction of stasis weapons, it seemed like it was only a matter of time before we were greeted with a stasis trace rifle. No matter how many times it's been incorrectly suggested that Coldheart should be turned into one. Read the lore, you jabronis, even I know that one. Ager's Scepter, an exotic 4 weeks in the making, released recently with its catalyst shortly thereafter. The catalyst comes from the Wayfinder's chest in Astral Alignment. If you're lucky, you'll get it in your first few runs, potentially even your first. If you're unlucky, like me, it'll take you 11 tries. If you're the god of unluckiness, like Astacross was, it'll take you 34 tries. Sorry, bud. To say that Ager's Scepter is a good weapon would be an understatement. Stasis is a very good tool to have in your kit, but since it was limited by your abilities and your cooldowns, it was kept in check. Ager's Scepter grabs that check, it throws it on the ground, it spits on it, and says, there is no more check. The main perk of the weapon produces a freezing AoE blast after killing an enemy, which can tag other enemies nearby and freeze them, which can be killed by Ager's Scepter, starting the chain all over again. The catalyst does the following. At full super, you're able to hold reload on the weapon and turn it into some crazy mega beam, increasing the damage dealt by 80%. Not only that, but you slow and freeze targets as you're shooting them. However, this effect does drain your super slowly over its duration, taking about 20% of your energy to even activate. I actually think it might be 25. But it can be cancelled by holding reload again. Otherwise, reloading the gun will stop the effect. You need to have full super in order to activate this effect. Without the catalyst, I think this is one of the most powerful primary-ish weapons in the game. Without any sort of a stasis build, it is still one of the most powerful primary-ish weapons in the game. The ability to just AoE freeze anything in sight is ridiculously strong in the majority of activities in the game, although there isn't much of a shortage of really strong primary-style weaponry right now. Trinity Ghoul and Huckleberry come to mind as junk enemy murder machines. So what can we do to bolster this weapon even more? For starters, hop on a Stasis subclass. The nice thing about Stasis is that it's actually quite valuable in the endgame, namely on Warlocks because of Bleak Watcher and the kind of uptime that you can have on Bleak Watcher. Glacial Harvest will generate Stasis shards whenever you freeze a target, and considering how often you'll be freezing targets, that's a great aspect to have on. This particular setup leaves us with 4 fragment slots. Now going from here, it really depends on what you want to be prioritizing, but considering we're talking about Ager's Scepter right now, I want to focus on enhancing the weapon's ability and my freeze capabilities as much as possible. Ager's Scepter feeds on super energy, so we're going to want to generate as much super energy as possible. Why don't you grab your Mantle of Battle Harmony out of the closet and throw that bad boy on? You know, the thing that enables you to basically double the amount of super energy you generate when meeting the conditions. Well, you got a Stasis weapon, you got a Stasis subclass, conditions met. Now we're going to pair this with Whisper of Bonds, giving you super energy whenever you defeat a frozen target. You'll be doing that quite a lot, but that's basically it as far as super energy goes for fragments. Otherwise, you can go in any direction you want from here. You want to enhance your weapon's stats? Whisper of Hedrons. Maybe you want to go crazy with your melee. Whisper of Hunger to boost energy gains, Conduction to bring those shards to you automatically, and Impetus to reload your stuff, or Fractures for even more melee energy. Maybe you want to get benefits from frozen targets. How about Fissures for more damage and Chains to take reduced damage? Again, it's all up to you. We're still not even done though. Throw on Font of Might while you're at it to further increase our weapon's potential damage, but we do need a way to make Stasis elemental wells. At the moment, elemental armaments, light, and ordnance are the basic ways, but as soon as this mod is available for purchase, elemental shards, we should be pretty good to go, since those stasis shards we're going to be making with Glacial Harvest will now count as stasis wells. Season of the Lost also has fire and ice to generate some orbs on champion kill, of which there will be plenty in endgame content. Now we're pretty much done. Throw on Scav and Finder mods and just kind of fill in the gaps as needed. But this does beg the question, what's the practicality of this build? Sure, we can walk into any normie activity and just face roll. I can set it up to seem like it's the most busted thing in the game. But that's not how people are playing, you know, average, random, moment-to-moment gameplay. Devil's Lair happened to be the Nightfall of the week, which is probably one of the best Nightfalls it can possibly be for this weapon, so I ran some master modes with my buddies to see how it performed. Some good stuff here, a little bit of bad that I definitely want to address. Let's start with the good. This did exactly what I wanted it to do: destroy low and mid-tier enemies. Planting a Bleak Watcher, spamming some melee, and shooting this thing just absolutely destroyed non-shielded enemies. In Devil's Lair of all places, that's really good. But that doesn't mean that this is going to be great everywhere, as you need a lot of enemies to cluster together to get the most value. I had 200 kills on this run, which was more than my teammates combined as they focused on other enemies and champions and shield destruction. However, I was playing very aggressively to show off the build as much as possible. After multiple runs of not being a tryhard and getting all of the kills, I think it still holds up pretty well as long as you know what targets to prioritize. Your job is still going to be locking down junk enemies. The Omega Catalyst Crazy Beam was also doing some work, especially when combined with High Energy Fire, Font of Might, although maybe not as much work as I was anticipating that it would. Maybe my brain has just been skewed by Anarchy's massive damage output from Season 14, I don't really know. I essentially used it like I would a Chaos Rage. Activate it when I had a good opportunity to use it, like on a champion or a lot of enemies spawning in, and then I turned it off when it was kind of over and I wasn't really doing anything. I didn't really try to use it inefficiently because of the very high activation cost. You can only activate it when you have your super. Overall, the build feels like it has a lot going on and a lot to manage. You're constantly shooting and freezing targets. You're dropping Bleak Watcher in high traffic areas. You're spamming your melee because of the stasis shards that are just pouring in. You'll get a lot of bonus weapon damage from Font of Might when Elemental Shards is available. Then you have High Energy Fire if you want to roll with that instead. There's so much potential power and ability spam here, and that's really fun, although it can be a little stressful to try to use all of those things and maximize all the buffs. But don't stress yourself out about it because you're still going to be doing really, really powerful things, even if you're not using every single thing on every single cooldown. Let's talk about some of the shortcomings and things that you need to look out for. Number one is definitely ammo. You are going to rip through ammo unless you are freezing stuff and then swapping to another weapon, which is arguably not nearly as fun and will kind of get cumbersome and kind of annoying. I don't really know how much I'd recommend running double special, although it doesn't seem like it would be too bad, but you're going to want to use Ager's Scepter as your primary weapon. That's part of the fun. This means that you might need to rely on your teammates for Special Ammo Finder, which does cost a third of your super now. It's not cheap. Fortunately, I was able to mostly self-sustain my ammo and super meter, even with me dropping a bunch of finishers, because you're going to get so much super energy killing all these little trash mobs that it can almost be a non-issue. Getting other people to hit finishers for you or generating special ammo for you, though, is going to be the ideal. Next is aggression. It does feel like you need to be somewhat aggressive with this build. The whole point is to be freezing and killing as much as possible in order to use your Mega Beam on enemies or just straight up use your own super. If you rolled with melee fragments, then you want to be getting those melees off, which does require some level of aggression. In Master Mode, you can be a little bit more aggressive, but in GM content, you're probably not going to be able to play in the way that I'm playing in this footage because you'd probably just die. You're 25 levels underneath. I don't anticipate that there will be too much of a problem with going a little bit slower in GMs. Shields are going to be a problem for you. You have almost no recourse against a shielded target, but that kind of goes for all activities with match game. Just wanted to mention it regardless. Enemies with shields can still be frozen though, so just keep that in mind. Higher health targets. In my opinion, more often than not, it's not really going to be worth using ammo on high health targets unless you're getting mostly headshots and you're dealing maximum damage, which means, you know, you're close enough to be dealing maximum damage. Even then, it kind of depends on the target and the difficulty. I'm probably not wasting ammo trying to kill something like you know, a red bar ogre or a knight, big targets with big health pools, unless there happen to be a ton of smaller enemies nearby. But then I would just shoot the smaller enemies instead. You want to be using this weapon in situations that it's the best in, which is finding the weakest targets possible, killing them, and then making sure that they freeze as much stuff as possible. As far as damage against champions in Master content, it was doing pretty well when you activated the Catalyst. I was about 10 levels underneath the enemies in this footage, and it was doing pretty respectable damage to stunned champions. Let me clarify that. Stunned. In stuff that isn't Master mode, you can just melt champions without stunning them in Omega Laser mode, but in Master, I definitely do not recommend trying to do that. You're just going to waste your ammo. But does it beat the simplicity or the speed of just using a linear fusion for a couple of shots? Like, it's much easier to just take out a heavy and use it as opposed to trying to burn a bunch of ammo. But at the same time, is it more fun than using an Omega Laser Beam? Definitely not. It's way more fun to use the Catalyst and Ager Scepter than it is to whip out a linear fusion. In situations where enemies are not really grouped up that much, this is a trace rifle. The entire point of the weapon is to destroy grouped up enemies, getting freezing to happen, and then continue to chain that. In the second part of Devil's Lair, there were a good amount of times where I was just kind of hopping around looking for multiple enemies to shoot, and sometimes there just wasn't a whole lot going on. Not every strike is Devil's Lair, where there's a ton of enemies all grouped up at all times. Other strikes, other activities, sometimes they're not going to have that. You know, Master VOG does. This will be a fantastic build for Master VOG. Garden of Salvation, you know, maybe not needed as much due to the nature of the encounters. To quickly touch on PvP and Gambit, in PvP it essentially performs like you would expect a trace rifle to perform, which is actually pretty good as we've reviewed, although the Catalyst will definitely turn some heads. And in Gambit, this thing will absolutely shred everything in sight because the mode is literally all about killing clustered groups of enemies. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't go into Gambit. I watched someone else for one game and I saw everything that I needed to see. Overall, this is a very, very strong weapon in most content in the game, to probably no one's surprise. In the upper tiers of content, Ager's Scepter, specialized with a build to support it, gets you a high action playstyle that gives you control over most trash mobs, with some bonus utility via the Catalyst to freeze bigger targets and to give a big boost of damage on other priority targets or situations. I initially thought this would be a game-breaking exotic purely based on the non-Catalyst random gameplay that I was doing. In Master content, I don't think it's a game breaker. It's teetering the line a little bit. It's very potent. I don't think it's a game breaker, but maybe we need a little bit more experience. I would like to see how it makes GMs in terms of their difficulty. That's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.